Welcome, American literature students. We have finally reached the last story that we're going to read together this year, and it is The Crucible by Arthur Miller. So today's video is an introduction to The Crucible with some background information as well as some instructions regarding the assignments that you're going to engage with over the next couple of weeks. So let's talk about the questions for this particular play. And this is a play. This is not a novel. This is not a short story. This is a play. So these three questions are going to be the focus of our discussions over the next 2 weeks. How does groupthink lead to hysteria? Now, if you're like, Mr. Roff, I don't know what groupthink is. I'm not familiar with hysteria. Don't worry. We'll be defining those terms as we talk about them over the next couple of days. So how do those two things, groupthink and hysteria within a society, prevent or obstruct the democratic process from occurring? So going back to The Moon is Down, we were talking all about democracy and why democracy is this powerful human form of government. Well, in this play, we see some hindrances to the democratic process. Question 2, what is the ideal purpose of law? And how does human depravity limit the process of justice within society? So we're going to be talking about law and justice. And then finally, to what extent is one's own reputation and name worth fighting to protect? So what is in a name? Why is our reputation important? Why does that matter? Those are our essential questions for this particular play. Now, with the play, because the play is 4 acts, so it's got 4 distinct chunks, we're actually going to be dividing those acts into 2 parts. They're not divided in the play that way, but we're going to be dividing them so that we don't give you too much of a reading assignment each day. And we're going to be alternating with those acts between completing reading guides and discussion posts. So for part 1 of each act, you'll have a reading guide to complete. For part 2, you'll be engaging in an online discussion post, very similar to what we did for The Moon is Down. And so we'll be posting both of those things on Google Classroom. Let me show you what the reading guides are going to look like. So I want to actually go through an example of the reading guide with you. I would say they're actually more straightforward than they were for The Moon is Down. But this is what you'll see for the reading observation assignment for Act 1. Now, you're not going to have access to this today. Okay, I haven't posted this on Google Classroom. You'll get this tomorrow. But I want to just show you what this looks like so you have an idea of what to expect. In the middle of the page, it says, as you read each of the 4 acts of The Crucible, you'll be keeping a record of your observations and your thoughts regarding those observations. For each act, you'll need a minimum of 4 observations and a minimum of 1 observation per category. So you could have more than those numbers. You could have 5 observations. You could have 10 observations if you really want to go crazy. But you have to have minimum of 4 and a minimum of 1 per category. Now, you might be asking yourself, well, Mr. Roff, what are these categories? Well, the categories are 4 different types of observations. The first would be questions. You're going to ask questions, and you can see some example questions from chapters 1 through 4 of the Scarlet Letter. I thought since we're going to be reading a book about Puritans and back in the 1600s in Salem, would be appropriate to use these as our examples. These can be comprehension questions or analytical questions. So what questions are also why and how questions are fine. You're also going to include the source of the question. Where did that question come from? Because this is a play, the second type of observation will be vitally important, visual or setting details. I would encourage you to pay attention to stage directions as you're reading this play. It's very easy to overlook the stage directions that tell the characters to perform a particular action, but they can be very important. They give us a picture of what's happening, since this is something that would be performed. You're going to include the visual or setting detail, as well as why that detail is important. Type 3, character details. So what do characters say or do, right? What are their words or their actions that stand out as important? And you're going to write down the character, what they say, and then how does that detail reveal something about them? And then finally, observation type number 4, thematic lines or passages. What lines or parts of the text stand out because they show something about the themes of the story? Now, you might be asking yourself, Mr. Roff, what are the themes that I'm going to be looking for? Well, I already went over the essential questions, and because I think those essential questions are important, I ended up putting them right here at the bottom of each of the reading guides. So you can use those as a way to remind yourself what are those themes that you're going to be engaging with. So things like groupthink, hysteria, democratic process, law, justice, reputation. All those words could be some of the themes you're looking for. All right, so those 4 types of observations. You'll have a blank space to do this on your post on Classroom, just like you did for The Moon is Down. At the bottom is the rubric we'll be using to grade these. These are each going to be worth 10 points, right? And those 10 points should be fairly easy to earn. So that's the reading guides. Let's head back and discuss one other tool we're going to be using. We're going to be trying out Flipgrid for this particular play. Now, the reason Flipgrid is a great tool for the Crucible is because during class, if we were reading this together in our classroom, we would actually be performing parts of the play out loud together. We would get to see each other act out various scenes from various characters. You know, somebody's going to be screaming like a crazy person like Abigail, or trying to defend his honor like John Proctor. Well, we're going to miss out on that. It's kind of sad. It makes me feel a little upset that we're missing out on that. So Flipgrid will be a tool to help us try that. So after each of the acts, so you'll do this at the end of Act 1, at the end of Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4, you'll be recording a short video. And by short, I mean less than 2 minutes in length, where you perform a key line from the act. You're going to get to read as dramatically as you can. You can add in props. You can bring in other people, of course, just family members that you're social distancing with, to help display what you want to show. And this is really just about having fun. All right, Flipgrid is an easy tool to use if you haven't used it already. I will be putting a link on Classroom to the code to my grid. All you have to do is click on that link. You log in using your school email address, so your wcastl.org email, and you should be in. You should have no problem getting access to my grid. When it comes time to actually posting something, there's a very big green record button. I'll show you in a second. You can take your video, you can review your video, you can submit your video, all right there on Flipgrid. Actually, you know what? Let's take a look at Flipgrid just to make things a little bit easier for you. So I'm going to go ahead and log into my grid, right? So here we are. This is American Literature, Mr. Roff, right? And this is the first post. Crucible Act 1, it says, choose a line or passage from the Crucible, record yourself reading or performing. There's actually a sample video here of me. You can see that goofy-looking face with a hat on. That's Mr. Roff. That's me. And then responses. There's a big plus, right? That green circle with the white plus in it. That's where you click to respond. So that's what Flipgrid essentially looks like. And you'll record directly on your iPad or your laptop or your phone or your Chromebook. Anything with a video, with a webcam should work just fine. All right, so that's Flipgrid. The last thing for today is background. Okay, and it says we'll use Flipgrid for Wednesday's lesson. It's actually going to be Thursdays, just to clarify. All right, last thing for today, background. So understanding the historical context of the play. So this play was actually written in 1952, but it is set in 1692. So it's set 350 years prior to when it was written. This is set during the Salem witch trials. But Arthur Miller was not alive during the Salem witch trials. So what we're going to do is we're going to conduct some background research on this particular play. The first thing you're going to do is read a short article called McCarthyism in the Crucible. It's attached to the Google Classroom post as a PDF. You're going to read that article, and you're just going to pay attention to some key details from it. I'm not going to have you fill out any writing or post to any discussion board. You're simply going to read it. After that, there's going to be 5 short videos from a documentary on the Crucible. These videos are between 2 to 5 minutes in length. You're going to watch each one of these videos, and you're simply going to pay attention for one question that you need to answer from each one. Now, I'm not going to make you write those answers. I just want you to know the answer, just to think about the answer. They're going to give you some understanding of the circumstances of this particular play being written. Now, we mentioned McCarthyism, okay? And so video part 1, which you can see the screenshot here of that particular video, as well as the question. So post-World War II, so we're talking about after 1945, the U.S. and the Soviet Union engaged in something called the Cold War. And it was really a war of ideology. There wasn't really any fighting. There was some military exercises conducted at various points, but it wasn't really a war of fighting. That's why it's called the Cold War. It was a war of ideological conflict. The U.S. and their democratic ideals of freedom versus the communists, right, and their totalitarian view of how the world should work. So in 1947, by 1947, there was a lot of fear going on in the U.S., in America, and among Americans about communism. So why was there so much fear? Consider that from this first video. Video part 2, we begin to see Hollywood getting involved. Yes, the people who make movies. And there's a particular film director named Elia Kazan who is talked about in this second part of the video. What does he do that was so unforgivable to many of his colleagues, to many of his other directors and writers and producers, even to a man who was his best friend and closest ally, Arthur Miller, who is the director and the writer of The Crucible? Part 3. What motivated Arthur Miller to write The Crucible? So in 1952, why does he actually write this play? Video part 3 is going to talk about that question. In part 4, we're going to look at the first performance of The Crucible. So how was it received when it was first premiered in 1953? And why was it received in that way? And then video part 5, the screenshot there, the picture that you see on the screen, is of an older Elia Kazan, talking about the lasting impacts of the witch hunt in Hollywood in the 1940s and 50s. So what were those lasting impacts? So you'll watch each of those videos, answer the question in your mind. You don't have to write anything out. And that's your assignment for today. Now, one last piece I want to remind you about. I will be providing a full text version of the PDF of the play. So if you have a hard copy and you want to acquire one, that's fine. But I will be giving you, just like I did for The Moon is Down, a copy of the play. And I'll be posting it each time we have a reading assignment. So for Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, and Act 4. That's it for the video today. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your Monday. Please let me know if you have any questions, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow when we read Act 1.